failing my daughter just because my craft room was messy. That was my tipping point, and I said, right, I have to sort it out now. Hi everyone, welcome to Ooni Crafts. Here we talk all about how creative empaths and highly sensitive people can find empowerment and inner peace through crafting, planning, and home organization. In today's video, I'm going to talk to you about how you can have a very successful craft room declutter without feeling anxious. Let's get started. Let me show you a picture of what my craft room used to look like a few months ago. This is what it is. Cluttered. There's clutter and mess on pretty much every surface that you see. And where I ran out of horizontal surfaces above ground level, I started dumping things on the floor. And you can see perfectly good items sitting there in big piles on the floor, on the carpet of this tiny little box room, which is my craft room. But this isn't the picture of a few weeks or a few months. My craft room has largely pretty much always looked like this after every few days of crafting and creativity. Most of the times when this happens, I find myself curled up in my fuzzy nightgown on my bed, feeling overwhelmed, despondent, wondering why I can't keep my creative space together, like all those people I see on the internet with their pristine, organized craft rooms, beautifully, perfectly decorated craft room walls, where everything is in its place, and they can find whatever they need within seconds because they know exactly where everything is. I felt like I don't even have the energy to start cleaning up my craft room again, because what's the point, right? It would all end up in one big heap anyway, so why start all over again? So I would just kind of pull myself together, force myself to go back into the craft room, and then I would start cleaning up again. I would clean up, put everything back where it belongs, and then I would sit down to craft it if I had the energy left to do it. But after a few minutes or an hour or a couple hours of crafting, the entire craft room would end up in one big mess again, which would lead me to feeling anxious and overwhelmed all over again. And then this whole negative cycle, which was not supposed to be negative at all, would continue. And it was agonizing. I did not want this negativity to be associated with my love for crafting. However, now let me show you what my craft room looks like right now, and it has stayed this way for the past few months. So here it is. It's not fancy, but can you see how much more calmer it looks? It looks like a place where you can just walk in, do your craft, whichever craft you want to do, and then you can come away without feeling overwhelmed. It has enough space to breathe and to move things around and to put things back once you've taken them out. The floors are clean. The walls are not overly cluttered. The horizontal surfaces have space for air to circulate and to breathe, and for things to be put on and to be removed easily. Ever since this has happened, I have been crafting more than ever before in my craft room. I've been using it more than ever before, and still my craft room continues to stay this neat and this tidy. So how did I do that? That's what I wanted to share with you today, which is what this craft room declutter without feeling anxious is all about. So let's get started. It all started with a book. It's called the ATV20 Principle by Richard Koch, and I have spoken about this in brief in this video as well. The premise of the book really is that most of the results that we have in our lives are the product of just a few activities. And you can basically apply this principle to anything. It's not just about activities, it could be objects, For example, in your kitchen, what you will realize that you use 20% of the items 80% of the time. Conversely, you will use 80% of your items only 20% of that time. And now this 80-20 is just a ballpark or a figurative way of putting it. It could be 70-30, 60-40, you name it however you want to. The point is that most of the items, most of the results, most of the progress that we desire in our life is a result of very few causes. And you can take this principle and apply it to any part of your life to yield immediate positive results. Now, when I looked at my craft room the way it used to be, before I genuinely started applying this principle all around my craft room, previously I had only applied it to one little area, which was my sewing tray, and I shared about this in the video I told you about earlier. But I had not applied this principle to my entire craft room. This time, the tipping point came when I really wanted to sit down and make something for my daughter. She wanted me to sew her a little doll's dress or help her make one. And I was so overwhelmed. I kept telling her, Sophie, I can't help you right now. Look at the state of my craft room. And she felt really, really sad about it. And I felt bad about refusing her or not coming up to her expectations, because that is what crafting is for me. As a highly sensitive person, every activity that I do carries with it a huge emotional reward associated with it. And for me, crafting is not just for me, but it's also a channel for me to connect more with my girls. I've got 2 girls, if you didn't know that. So this is what I did. I took the 80-20 principle and I applied it to my craft room. Now, you might be thinking, oh, so now maybe it's going to turn into one of those videos where I start showing you how I decluttered and pulled things off the shelf and blah, blah, blah. Well, no, because I know you are a highly analytical person, as a highly sensitive person or an empath, and I know that you like to analyze things on your own, in your own time. So there are thousands of other decluttering videos on YouTube that you can watch for inspiration. This is not going to be one of those. Here I would like to take a more academic, a more nerdy approach towards it and show you exactly the process, the thought process that went into creating these results that I now have and I'm thoroughly enjoying. Speaking of the 80-20 principle, first of all, let me just say I would like to think that I can indulge in a million different crafting things, but what are the handful of those crafty things or crafty activities that I would do 80% of the time? That was the premise. So, for example, I like doing woodwork. I made wands for my daughters using my electrical sander and my saw. I made a wooden boat for my daughters using, again, my sander and my saw and paint and nails and hammers and screwdrivers and my drill bits. But the question is that an activity? Is woodworking an activity that I would be doing 80% of the time? No, it's not. So in essence, I needed to pinpoint the stuff or the crafting activities that I would be doing in my craft room most of the time, or 80% of the time, as per the book. So what did I do? I just sat down with a piece of paper and a pen and I made a list. So this is what the list looked like on paper, scribbled with my hand, but because this is so untidy, I'm going to show it to you on the computer. Okay, so here we are in the Word document. This is just a typed out version of the same list that you saw in my notebook, and hopefully you'll be able to understand the logic behind it better rather than looking at my untidy scribbling. So basically I started off with creating a list of all the activities that I was likely to do most often in my craft room. Filming videos, painting, sewing basic projects. So as you can see, I've not written big or detailed projects, I've written basic projects. Planning, writing and taking notes, using my computer, ironing clothes. So My craft room is on the same floor as our bedrooms, so I do iron my little girls' uniforms every evening here, so I needed to put that down here as well, along with Skype classes. So my daughter does take language classes. She takes French classes once a week, and she uses the computer for that, so that was part of the list. Next, I took each one of these uses. So I took the first one, which was filming videos, and I broke it down. So here it is, filming videos, and I broke it down into what items I would need in order to film those videos. I do have other fancier video filming equipment. I've got fancy light reflectors and other kinds of detailed, fancier backdrops, which I might be needing for God knows when. But the thing is, this is the stuff I would be using 80% of the time. The other stuff, the other fancier stuff, I hardly ever touch. So all those cameras and stuff I did not list here because they did not form 80% of the equipment I would be needing for filming videos. Let's look at another example, sewing basic projects. Now if I show you sewing basic projects, 14 different items. And one thing to keep in mind here, which I did was, look here, I wrote down sewing machine within easy reach. Okay? Again, here as well, look down here. Stash of fabric, fusible interfacing, applique paper, somewhere close by. If there is stuff which is bulky, which takes up a lot of room, or which is heavy and cumbersome to move around, maybe you don't need to have it within your crafting space all the time. Maybe you can keep it somewhere else, but within easy reach. And that's what I did. So with my sewing machines, for example, I removed all of them from my craft room, and I'll show you how I did that in a moment. But what you have to do essentially is you work your way down this list and make sub-lists of all the stuff you will need for each activity. So for planning, writing, and taking notes, I wrote down all of these things. You will start getting a very clear idea of what things really genuinely belong inside your craft room and what things do not need to be there all the time. So this is what you have to do really. You just grab a piece of paper and a pen, sit down and have a think about what are the things that you like to do most of the time in your craft room, or 80% of the time, and list those down. And then break each of that activity down and list out the things you need, or the crafting equipment you need for each of those activities. I brought up some boxes and some bags. The boxes were clear and the bags were also clear IKEA bags. I picked up each item in my craft room and I tallied it with my list. Did it fit into my list? And if it didn't, it went straight into either a box or the bag. My big sewing machines, I had no intentions of using them regularly, so they went out of the room. Every single thing went through this tally until all I was left was little more than what is on that list that I just showed you. Okay, a few extra things that did remain in my craft room are my really heavy heat press, which you have seen earlier in this video, and the only reason why I didn't move it out is because it's just so heavy. It weighs between, I think, 15 and 20 kilos, so it's got almost like a permanent spot underneath my desk, so that stayed. Along with that, I needed a dustbin. Now, after I did this, all I was left in my craft room was pretty much the stuff that I would be using 80% of the time. So I found enough space in the cupboard under my desk. I found more than enough space on my shelves, on the walls, and everything else just got packed away and moved out. Now we're going to deal with the final destination or the final end for that stuff at another moment in time. But for now, in order to declutter my craft room and heal it and bring about this positive energy, which is only a byproduct of creating space wherever you go, that happened very, very quickly. And the reason why I didn't feel anxious or overwhelmed throughout this process was twofold. Number one, I had a list to work through. And number two, I had decided I'm not going to just throw out or give away the stuff I was moving out in that moment. I, for now, just put it away in another part of the house and decide the final fate of those things later on. After I did this, I kept this list handy. And what I've been doing is I've been making sure that I do not leave things lying around the craft room which are not on the list. So for example, the other day my daughters asked me if I could help them make some bookmarks because they've been reading so many different books and they were running out of bookmarks. So we sat together, we made lots of little bookmarks, and we clipped them and laminated them and did all sorts of paper crafts. So we still ended up using the craft room for paper crafts, but after it was done, I moved that paper craft equipment out of the craft room because that is not an activity that I would be using 80% of the time. And it's just stayed so much more calmer, so much more organized. Now, what about all the stuff that you did move out of your craft room? There is a very logical way in which you can store that stuff within boxes. All you have to do is take a piece of A4 paper, and as you are taking stuff out of your craft room and putting it in that box, keep on writing on that sheet of paper what stuff you are putting in the box. So once the box fills up, that list becomes the table of contents for that box, and you can just stick it on top of that box using some sellotape or some blue tack, and now you will know exactly what's in that box. Even though it might look like a random pile of stuff, you will know exactly what's in there because you wrote it down in that list. Now my crafting process has drastically changed. Now I simply walk in, I craft, and after I'm done crafting, I put the things away. That's it. There are no massive messes which have been happening. Nothing has been just falling over itself and other stuff. I've not been tripping over things because I'm just so overwhelmed by the clutter, because there is no clutter around here. I do hope you have benefited from this video and that you've got something to take away with you in order to start decluttering your craft space or your craft room without too much anxiety and overwhelm. Thank you so much for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and I shall see you guys next week. Thank you. Bye.